The books that I've just finished have made me realise that I don't know much about Sweden and its culture. So it was the Millennium trilogy by Stieg Larsson, the one that starts with the girl with the dragon tattoo. And I have some questions about Sweden. 1, to do with sandwiches, 2, to do with directness, and 3, to do with levels of detail. But before I go into those questions, I'll just quickly say about the trilogy that I did enjoy it and it's worth reading, but it's very different from what I expected. It's slower and it's not this super fast-paced crime thriller. But there is a mystery to be puzzled out and solved. And although I did see a lot coming, especially in books 1 and 3, there was something that surprised me in book 2, and I love being surprised. But my first question about Sweden is about sandwiches. In the UK, we do love a good sandwich, but it's usually at lunchtime and not as your main meal. So as your main meal, you'd have something more filling, usually cooked. But in these books, which are set in Sweden, they seem to have sandwiches even for their main meals all the time, every day. I don't know if it's just this author or if it's something in Sweden generally. It's not the norm to have a sandwich for the main big meal of the day. So I was just going to ask whether it's normal in Sweden to have a sandwich as the big meal of the day. And there were also some interesting combinations that I'd never heard of before. So it was cheese and liver pate together in a sandwich. And then there was cheese and marmalade, I think. And I'd never heard of either of those two combinations before. Are they pretty normal combinations in Sweden? The second question that I had to do with Swedish culture is to do with directness. If it was just one character, then I would just put that down as a character trait, as maybe that person was just very brusque and direct and not very socially adept. But this applied to all the characters. They were very direct, and it sounded to my British ear as impolite and rude. So, for example, if someone was asked to dinner, the person replying would say just, "No, I don't want to." And in the UK, you wouldn't even treat someone you didn't like that. You would say, "Oh, that's so kind of you to offer. I'd love to, but," and then you'd say why you couldn't. You'd have to give an explanation why you couldn't. There are lots of instances throughout the book where this sort of direct truth, which sounds harsh, was the case. Now, I actually quite like this. I would love that you could just say the truth and it not be considered rude or impolite, and that you could just say, "No, I don't want to," or "No, I just want to get settled for the evening," and that wouldn't be considered an insult to the person asking the question. So is that level of directness just the norm in Sweden, and it's not considered rude? The third question about Swedish culture is what level of detail is considered tedious? So I think this may not be a Swedish thing, and it's just individual to this particular author, because he was giving so much unnecessary detail and going into such depths of detail about completely irrelevant things that didn't even make the story richer, and it slowed things down. And just things like giving a detailed family history about a person, so you thought, oh, this person's going to be significant because you're giving so much history behind it, and then that person didn't end up playing a part at all, just the tiniest character part in the story. And that happened numerous times about various different things, and every single time they described a computer or any device of some kind, they gave the specifications each time in quite a lot of detail, the RAM, processing speed, and it just goes, that's really sounded almost like an advert, but you know it wasn't, because it was written quite a long time ago. It was just things that you would expect an editor to just chop out and make sure those things weren't in there. Again, I don't think that's a Swedish thing, but do Swedes go into quite a lot of detail about things, and that's considered quite standard? Whenever a house or apartment was mentioned, they went into the square footage of each room and the total area of the whole house, just things that wouldn't normally be in a book or considered interesting. Yeah, so I feel very ignorant about Sweden. I'd love to know more. The only famous people I know from Sweden were that female heptathlete quite a while ago called Carolina Klüft, and Sven-Göran Eriksson, of course. So if you know the answers to any of these questions, please let me know in the comments. Thank you.